One thing that bothers me, it drives me nuts, actually, is the mysterious garbage dialogue. Um, you see this sometimes in TV shows. The one that stands out to me is the dreaded College of Mages College quest in Skyrim. It always drives me nuts because you're a young mage and you go into the ruins of Sarthor and something happens and then this guy teleports in and your mentor is frozen and he's like, "Ooh, mysterious stuff. You've triggered something. We can't tell what it is, but it's going to be bad and it's up to you. Good luck." And you're like, "What?" And all of Cornir's dialogues, I think that's his name. I, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but the Sijics are going to get me. But yeah, all his dialogue is, well, you're on a path. It's inevitable. We can see into the future, except not right now. And you screwed up, but it's up to you to make it better. And you're like, okay, I get it, but what? What are you talking about? And the same thing, at some point you're sent to the Augur of Durnir, who is some mage who turned himself into a glowing sphere. And this dude's like, "You're on a path, a scary path, a path not traveled. Others have come before you. Everyone's going to die." Nothing about it. You get no information from these conversations. At best, they at some point tell you, "Oh yeah, and after all this mysterious shit that is meaningless, go get the staff." That your job is to go. I don't know what's going to happen or what's the point, but I know that you need to go get the staff. And so you have a lot of dialogue which just sits there, and the whole point of it is to go mystery and suspense. Oh yeah, go get the staff because we actually don't know what's going to happen. There really is no mystery or suspense behind it. Why is this sphere, the Eye of Magnus, dangerous? Well, we don't know. It's just very powerful, and the world's not ready. Go get the staff. And I hate that. I hate that kind of stuff. I don't. No, but okay, we're not here to gripe about Skyrim. We're here to gripe about your GM. I'm just kidding. We're here to gripe about my GM. So the whole reason for that story is there was a point in time. This is hopefully many years ago. I'll have to ask my players if I've corrected this mostly. But there was a point many years ago where I realized that too many of my conversations in my games ended up with the players being confused, right? The conversations were too mysterious. No information was conveyed. And the players were probably frustrated a little bit. And even though at some point maybe I furthered the plot, I told them, well, you have to go to the hills and kill the gnolls. They still didn't necessarily... The conversation conveyed really no other information. And it could have gone on for 20 minutes. Oh, well, yes. There are mysterious lights up in the hills. Well, what color are those lights? Well, and there are many colors. Right? I don't have a conversation for you. I have stuff later in the script, but not. By the way, this is a dumb aside. I had ChatGPT. At some point, I was because I couldn't find it on Google, so I said, "Hey, do you know the quest dialogue in the Mages College for the Augur of Durnir or whatever?" And ChatGPT busted out some great fan fiction. I was like, that's actually better than the quest dialogue, really. You had Cornir busting in on the Augur and going, "I will destroy all that you hold dear," and right, and they're like, "Wow, that's okay." Then I said, "Are you sure that's it?" And it said, No, here's the boring quest dialogue. And then it gave me mostly the real quest dialogue. Then I just looked it up on the wiki, so it was close. But yeah, so at some point I realized, hey, I have this problem. I have this problem that these these conversations are very, they're just not working. Maybe I was trying to make the character mysterious, right? Ooh, the Augur of Dernier, he knows so much. Or Quarnir, right? These are supposed to be mysterious dudes who are, beyond the characters in their knowledge, and they know what's going on, or they don't, but they know a lot. The characters don't, and so you're making them seem like they know anything without actually proving it by telling us anything, because you actually, as the GM, probably don't know, right? Like that's part of the problem. Maybe you weren't sure how much the character knows, or you actually don't. Like the Eye of Magnus is just a MacGuffin. It actually doesn't really have any powers. It's not going to do it. You can leave it there for 6 years in the game. Now that's very video game Bethesda logic, and that's fine. I actually don't begrudge them that. But I suppose my point is, I think those quests are mysterious, or those conversations, because they don't even know what they're going to do. Like none of that actually knows what the point of those items are, in context of the game. And so if you also don't know, then it's hard for you to say, well, those gnolls are amassing an army, because the psionic wizard or whatever, right? You don't know, so you can't tell anything. Or maybe you're not sure, like the character's disposition toward the PCs, and so you're like, oh, I don't know how much the character would say, even though he knows stuff, right? And that all leads to the mysterious garbage syndrome, like that mysterious dialogue, where everything's spooky, mysterious, but you're like, well, was there? I mean, some of those conversations in some of those quests could not have happened. And I could have just said, yeah, he says, go get the stuff. And, maybe they said a little bit of the scene. Oh, we there's gnolls and they're dangerous, but there was so little information conveyed that really they just moved the plot. It was literally plot point A to plot point B. That was the whole conversation. And you really needed almost nothing else there. And sometimes you don't need it, but a lot of times, there's you want more information, or you want a flow of the conversation so that it seems like it's happening naturally. And and you're so thinking about what conversations are there for, really. Really your conversations are either to establish like character, to establish a relationship or banter, or even just a sense of place. Like, so, either you have characters and you're establishing their character or what they mean to each other, or you're just lighthearted bantering between players, typically, or NPCs and PCs, or you're just establishing a sense of place by, they're, but you could probably do that without having a conversation. You might say, oh, yes, the two old women in the stalls were talking about the freshness of the produce. And there you go. There's your sense of place, and you don't have to talk about produce. But that's one sort of uber reason. The other reason is to convey information. If you're not doing one of those two things, you have a problem. And so if you come away and your players come away from conversation and go, man, what should we do now? And you didn't intend that's an issue that you have. And to sort of, so there was a point at which I said, man, I think I really have a problem here. Too much of this is happening. And a lot of that did come when I think when it hit me was I was in school and we were playing a lot, and there was a lot more improvisation going on than not. Like there was a less planning and more improv, kind of off the cuff. Hey, you guys want to play tonight? Yeah, let's play. And I'm like, fudge, I don't have anything prepped. I was studying, just a minute ago. But yeah, sure, I'll come, I'll run something for you. And a lot of that then came from, I'm running adventures that I actually plan for to adventures that literally I had 20 minutes to think about. And so a lot of the plot points were less defined. And don't get me wrong, some of this won't help that. If you have 20 minutes to prep, you're sort of screwed. But it's I think the problem started just seeping in general. And that's when I decided, okay, hold on. let's curtail this, right? So my solution was to make these conversations less like Skyrim and more like Ultima, if anyone remembers Ultima, where you would type in, "Hey, who are you?" and it would say, "Oh, my name is Johann the Miller," and you type Miller, and he would go, "Yes, I mill the grain and make the flour for the town." And you go, "Flour? Oh, the finest flour in town, but don't mind the if you don't mind the rats, the occasional rat hair." Rat hair? Oh yes, you might see them running around. It's been a plague as of late, right? Plague? Oh goodness, yes. Ever since that hole in the ground opened up in the north, right? That kind of thing. You have that sort of. You're giving them one or two words, and then they're coming with the dialogue. And Morrowind did this. Zork, Ultimate did this. And that is how I sort of pulled myself out of that death spiral of bad conversations. Was I started to use a little bit of that kind of planning for each conversation. Now, what that means is that you think about the different scenes or NPCs that you have, and you go, "This is actually an opportunity. This isn't an NPC, right? As this is this." It is an NPC, but this is not just an NPC. It is an opportunity to give the players meaningful information so that they can do things, make choices, understand the world, right? All those things that you want, ideally. This is a guy that could give it to you. And so I would take then every topic that was of interest and make up a little card with some bullet points that I was thinking, this is a piece of information I would like the players to ultimately get somehow. They could have to rip it out of someone, bribe them, hang them upside down, do a Batman off of the side of the building, right? Whatever. That's a Frank Miller Batman, not a Adam West. Would never do that. But I would think about it, a number of bullet points, maybe even a triggering condition for each of the bullet points, and then enough of a blurb to start me off and go, okay, this is what they're going to tell them here. And that sounds a little bit like conversations from the games Ultima and Morrowind and Zork. And that is sort of how I started working it. And sort of I kept that through, today, actually. So let me maybe show you. I don't know. Maybe. Let's see. Can I? So what does it look like in practice? Well, I mean, it's not super clever in practice. And this isn't real. I just wrote these like in 5 minutes. Right? And you'll see on the left, I just have a word or a phrase or a topic. On the right, I have the blurb, and I might have links, and they're not real links. They're just bold and italicized, so I know that there's another topic that links to this somewhere. So there's been attacks in the haunted hills, and so they go to one of the merchants, and they say, "Well, what about these attacks, sir?" And he goes, "Well, we made it through without incident. We're quite lucky. Quite a few others have been attacked when going through those hills. Only a matter of time." What with those creepy shrines overlooking the road? Theoretically, that leads them to ask about the creepy shrines if they've not heard of the shrines before. And he tells them about that, and you'll see, oh, well, the shrines, anytime we passed, it was as though we were being watched, right? That kind of thing. And at some point, some of the men reported hearing growling and snapping on watch. It got so bad that at some point we decided to never camp within sight of the place. Growling and snapping? No. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, that they could ask about anything. Well, where were you exactly? And at that point, I think you give them that. Well, here's your map, and you mark it there. There you go, and the shrines are up in these hills there. You've never seen them. Oh, goodness. Oh, they've been there for years. Just appeared one day, or whatever, right? You don't have to limit yourself to this list. You don't have to give them the entire list. This is not intended to be a lore dump. You don't have to rigidly stick to each of these topics or whatever. The idea is that you plan enough that you have an understanding of what this NPC knows and what he's willing to convey to the PCs, given the right nudge or given the right prompt or the right skill check. There's no reason you can't put a skill check there, right? Maybe down here he goes, oh, well, you know, the priest has been in Townsville a long time. I don't know him very well. I've heard, though, that he's an expert in the old gods. That is when he isn't. Well, I better not say. And at that point, maybe the PCs press him. Maybe they let it go. Maybe they bribe him or persuade him. Maybe there's a skill check there. Maybe you have a side quest in mind, or you can gen one up on the fly, and you go, well, or it doesn't have to be a quest. Maybe it's like, well, I could really use. I heard that you have an expert in beast lore within your party. Don't mind me. I've asked around, and what I was wondering was, perhaps you could look at my horse. She's been acting strangely recently, or something of that nature. It could just be a skill check, right? And all this is really a different way to organize information. You theoretically have written an adventure already. You've prepped a little bit. And you don't need to do this around. So that's sort of what it looks like in practice. Now, I might do it in Word. I might do it on a note card, and then it's a lot less gritty and more bullet pointy, or in my notebook, right, that I'm keeping for any given campaign. And I might but I just want the idea is I have some topics, and I have a blurb of information, and I have enough there that I can say that when the PCs go to talk to this guy, I want them to get this information. And that's sort of what that ends up looking like. And I have somehow totally screwed up my screen, by the way. Like I have jacked up my whole OBS setup here. And I'm sort of not sure how I did it. That was, genius. But anyway, so yeah, you don't have to go nuts with it. You just need enough, right, so that you have a basic plan of where the conversation is going and what that frees you up to do. Because a part of improvising isn't, just being, a super genius or a theater kid or whatever, which I was never that, by the way. Never a theater kid or a super genius. But one of the keys to improvising as a GM is reducing the amount of things you have to think about at the same time, I feel. Right? So that you're not deciding what the NPC is saying, how much he knows, what's his disposition to the players. Now, if you were, and another thing too would be his disposition to the players. Again, you could determine that ahead of time. Make a roll, have them make one of their skill checks secretly behind the screen and go, okay, they succeeded, so he'll give them this information. Or, man, they failed, so he's going to be really reluctant to give them any of this until they do something for him. So we'll start the conversation with that. And you so there you go. And so there's less cognitive load on each decision that you make. So you just don't have to worry as much about some of those things. You already have a plan for the conversation. And it gives a little bit of a flow to the conversation, right? As opposed to info dumping or whatever, you can start with, and you might mark one of those topics and put an asterisk on it and go, well, that's where he's going to start. Or wait for the players to ask their question. Then they go, well, what do you know about the haunted hills? And then maybe there's an entry for the hills in there. And you go, well, the hills to the north are very important. They're the main road between Townsville and city center. Citydale's better. Townsville and Citydale. The merchants go by there at least once a month. But boy, things have gotten rough now that we've been attacked. Done. There you go. And now they're on the rest of the conversation, right? But the idea is this gives you information, it gives you a way to organize the information, it gives you a way to reduce your cognitive load. It also gives a flow to the conversation. And then maybe as you're doing it, you get some ideas for where you can gate information behind bribes, skill checks, relationships. I'll tell you this, if you've done something for this NPC before, he'll tell you this on the sly. If not, well, he won't tell you. Done. And you get sort of that going in there, and you can easily summarize that in a grid. Done. That's not to say that this is, surefire or without straw man arguments against it. I mean, maybe it sounds like a lot of work or prep, and yeah, again, this would not help you if you were where I was back in college, and this would not have helped you exactly. Although I did, so we'll talk about that in a second, I think. But if you have an adventure that you're writing and you're doing this for an adventure, I would say it doesn't take any more prep than writing your adventure in the first place. A lot of this information is just information you already have in a paragraph somewhere anyway. It's just what you're doing is you're assigning different pieces of those information to different NPCs or different types of NPCs that the PCs might meet so that you know how to give that information out and when to give that information out. So you already theoretically know about the hills and the knolls in the hills and the shrines in the hills. That's the adventure that you sort of plotted out. Now you're just saying that this merchant knows about these things and he's going to lead you these places, potentially. You don't need to script the whole conversation either. That's not really the point. The point is just to make sure that every conversation has the potential, every scene has the potential to convey something meaningful that not just moves the plot forward, but also increases the understanding of the players of the situation. I always feel that even though this might be counter to some folks' ideas, intuitions, the more that your players know, the better off the game is going to be. And that doesn't mean they have to know everything, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a bit. And so let's talk about the scripting. Is this very scripted? Is this on rails? And the funny thing is, I do this. I try very hard to not run games on rails at all, and to my detriment to a degree, because in this latest campaign, there are 5 or 6 threads out there, and every week it's like, well, I need to know what we're planning to do, or at least I have to have 3 or 4 things ready, depending on if everything segs one way or the other. So I try very hard not to run scripted games, and I find that this helps actually in the opposite. If I'm running a very scripted game, I don't need this. I have a script. Like if I have a script, I don't need this. I know who you're going to talk to, and I know what they're going to tell you. And that's the script. That's part of the script. If I'm running a game on rails, if I'm running a one-shot that has to have certain things happen, those things are going to happen. I know that. But when I'm running freeform, it helps. Again, when I'm running freeform, I'm trying to reduce the number of things I don't know and reduce the number of things I have to decide on the fly. And this gives me a plan for bulk pieces of information to give to the players. Now, in the case when the game is not, like when they go off the rails, or when it's not scripted, or when things, there's a couple things that I do. I don't necessarily tie those information grids to an NPC. I might just tie them to a topic in general. I might have general ones that are just rumors about town that anyone can know, and I can just go, well, if they go talk to the miller's wife, oh, well, she also has information on the old priest. And she might be willing to give that up, if the PCs are willing to regale her with a story of their latest adventures, right? And again, you don't have to tie these grids to an NPC. You can just tie them to a topic. You can make a general, like for the town we have now, I have a little grid of topics, that pieces of information I ultimately want to get to the players. And I just sort of randomly pick them out, and I just give them to NPCs that they're talking to here and there, and just work it that way. And then, I actually, I attach that bullet to that NPC. This NPC knows this, and I'm free to do that to multiple NPCs per bullet or whatever, and just work it like that. And that way, I'm giving myself ways to give the PCs information. It's flexible in that, there's no dead ends necessarily, and it, strangely enough, makes the town and the group of NPCs feel alive, because wherever they go and whoever they're talking to, something might happen. Something interesting might happen. So it's much less scripted, but it is planned a little, right? I'm trying to get them the plot hooks, the rumors, the gossip, the secrets, and I'm putting them, and then I'm doling them out, and I'm giving them to NPCs either on the fly or it's scripted, or I'm doing it on the fly, and I'm just making sure that this information is getting to them. And that's what you want. You want a flow of information. And then another question might be, well, what if you want something to be mysterious or a secret? So here's the thing. Unless that is a key point, unless you're running a mystery, or the secret is just something that's going to be revealed later, a big reveal, I would argue, don't do this. There's not many mundane adventures that actually benefit. Now, do I want the PCs to know everything at the time zero, day one, right? As soon as no, you don't. What you want is a continuous flow of information to them, and each of these scenes is giving them another piece of the puzzle. And the reason you're doing that is so that their understanding is increasing, and that allows them to start making choices and have, the agency in a free form game. If you were the window to the world, you are literally every piece of information they're going to have comes through you. It is almost always better if you give slightly too much information than if you don't give enough. So what I say is, if I'm not running a mystery, then I stop being mysterious. If it's not a secret, then at some point they're going to know it. And if it is a secret, at some point they're going to know it. Just the conditions are going to be way harder. So I would tone down. I would tone down the it actually helps more. Strangely enough, and you might not think this, but I feel that it typically is better if they find out while they're in town that it's gnolls in the hills. That's actually more interesting than them not knowing what's in the hills. Because if they know that it's gnolls in the hills, then they can start, well, what are gnolls like? How strong are they? What do they eat? Do they have any senses that are particularly good? Is there anything that will repel gnolls or destroy gnolls? Or do we know what the gnolls' gods are? Do we, right? That whole thing opens up. If they don't know, then they're just going to go there, and that's fine, and they go there, and they're going to fight the monsters, and that's fine. But if you give them more information ahead of time, then you're opening up this whole world of thought and planning that you did not give them before, because they had no information, because you were withholding the information. So I always err on the side of giving them more information than less. And so for something like this, I want them to know I want them to ultimately go and talk to the guardsman in the tavern who heard the growling and snapping, and he tells them that maybe he heard a yipping, or maybe sees a dog like, a hyena like, a humanoid, right? Maybe someone just outright goes, "Hey, those are gnolls. You mean them gnolls up there in them hills, right?" And then bam, and now they know. Ultimately, that's what you want. And the nice thing is, and you led them on. You kept them moving from one person, the merchant, down to the tavern, to old Zed the tracker. Boom, 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 gnolls, right? From some men heard noises on watch, to, oh yeah, it was dark and shadowy, and there were these hunched humanoids that made these really frightening laughing sounds, to, oh yeah, the gnolls in the hills, they're trouble. Watch out for them traps that they set. I've seen a man get his whole leg taken, right? I mean, bam. And that's actually a very cool progression that you can work. It just takes the tiniest bit of prep, I think, here, but I don't think it's that much more, like I said, than writing your adventure. You were simply organizing the information in bits and handing those bits to different NPCs, and then allowing the PCs to follow the trail. So, I think that's enough. You've listened to me enough. Some of you were like, "Yeah, I do this all the time. I don't know what he's talking about," and that's fine. Good for you. This was actually a lesson learned a while back, the hard way. It was actually several games that I was like, "Man, I just don't feel good about how that went." And I don't feel good about how last week went either. Why is that? And there was a little bit of introspection to go, oh, it's because I'm doing that whole weird, the cloaked figure says, "Ooh, bad things are happening." You go, "What bad things?" And he goes, "Well, I can't tell you." Why the hell are you here then? And 32 minutes in, why the hell am I still here? So, thank you very much. I will talk to you all later. Have a good evening and good night.